We're up to 7 Lamed base, Sif Kaf Vov, page 99. Right, 7 Lamed base, Sif Kaf Vov. Im Oisis Shel Shein Dvukois Yochel Afridon. If the letters of one of the names of Hashem are connected, the letters are clearly visible, but just there's a bit of ink connecting them. And we of course mentioned that if every letter has to be mukaf gula, has to be surrounded by parchment entirely on all sides. So if it's connected to another letter, that means it's not surrounded by parchment, one has to separate the letters. So one can do this even if it's the letters of Hashem's name, one can still scrape off that little bit of ink that's connecting the letters between them. It's not part of the actual letter. Okay. Let's move on. Tif Kav Zayin. Oisios, Ketevos, Shenimchaku Ktsas. If you have letters or words that are partially rubbed out, partially erased, in Rishumon Nikr, if there's still enough of enough ink there that one can recognize the letter, Kolkach, Shetiluk Deloichakim Lotipish Yochalikos, and that a child can still recognize the letter and read it correctly. One can pass the quill over them and write over them in order to make the writing better, to renew it. If it's an old mezuzah where the lettering has faded, as long as the child can still recognize every single letter, then one can give it to a sofa to touch it up, to go over all the letters. Not a problem of writing it shaloi kisijun in the incorrect order, because the mezuzah is still kosher. Every letter in the mezuzah still has the correct form. It's still kosher, and therefore there's no problem to write over them. The MISHNA Berura talks about brown. Often when you get very old writing, it can turn to brown. So the MISHNA Berura brings a machlokas about this. Let's read the. If we turn back the page, if we turn back again, and we're starting from the MISHNA Berura, 4 lines from the bottom of the MISHNA Berura. MISHNA Berura, 4 lines from the bottom. There's a full stop and it says V'da. We're on page 99. We're just looking at the Shulchan, the MISHNA Berura, 4 lines from the bottom of the MISHNA Berura. It says V'da. Got it? Yeah. V'da oid. V'da sapim megodim hu. Dafilu nish'al mamoshes dioi. Even if there is actual ink left on the klaf, but the black part has gone. V'nish'al odoim. It's referring to brown. It remains brown. Havish shaloi kasidim da'undem ein kosher l'tfilin. The Prima Godim holds if it loses its black color, then it's possible. Whereas the Chasam Sofer holds that if it started off black and just because it's old it turned brown, it's kosher. Because it's written correctly with black ink. Says the Chasam Sofer, it only has to be completely black when one's writing it. We mentioned that dio, one of the most important about dio, it has to be black, has to be very black color. Right? That's what we mentioned. We talked about can one use ink from a store to write tefillin. We mentioned one of the biggest problems is it has to be completely black, like our dio. Says the Chasam Sofer, the blackness only has to be at the time of writing. If later on it turned color, it's still okay. The Prima Godim holds if it's got turned brown, then it's possible. The Chasam Sofer holds it only has to be black at the time of writing. It has to be written with dio, written with black ink. If it turned brown afterwards, it's okay. Says the Chasam Sofer, most ink does that. It's not a problem. Most ink turns brown when it gets old. It's brown. Right, it turns into brown. Even so, it's better, even according to Sofer, it's better to touch it up. Unless it's turned red, then it's a problem.
It's conceivable, if it's from age, that if one letter is turned brown, virtually they all will. It's the same ink written at the same time.
Correct. That does happen, but it's not always the case. Not always the case, but you're right. Usually you find most, if not all, the mezuzah is affected by this.
So it virtually has to be rewritten on top of the brown.
Yeah, generally, Generally it's not worth it. If once you get a mezuzah that gets to that level, it's not worth. You might as well write a new mezuzah. It's just if it's a couple of letters you kept at the beginning. Right. It's just a couple of letters. But even then, it's probably the rest is also going to deteriorate
soon. Yeah.
The sofa will decide if it's worth touching up or not. If it decides it's not worth the bother, then. But in terms of halacha, anyways, in terms of halacha, it's a machlokes prima godim and chasam sofer. According to the prima godim, you can't. According to chasam sofer, you can. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Let's see the next sif. So we're now on page 100, second line from the top. Shulchan Aruch. Sif Kaf Ches. Yesh li zoher, shlo yikones roish halamed be'aver ha'hei, oy ha'ches afilu b'lo negia. One has to be careful that the head of the lamed is the tallest letter. One has to be careful that it doesn't enter into any of the letters on the line above it. Okay? It goes into the space of the space of the hay, the air of the hay, the air space of the hay, meaning it enters between the two legs at the bottom of the hay, or between the two legs of the ches at the bottom. Even though it doesn't touch the letter of the ches, if it touches the ches, then it's a problem of mukaf kavir, right? If it touches, if the top of the neck of the lamed touches the leg of the hay or the ches, then it's a problem of shalok. It's a problem of mukaf gula. The letters are not surrounded by parchment. But even if it doesn't touch, it just goes into the airspace of the hay or the ches. Right? Then one should make sure that doesn't happen. Is it possible or not? Let's have a look at the MISHNA Berura. The Shulchan Aruch just tells us make sure it doesn't happen.
So if it were to go into the space of, say, a chet, that is, it went into the chet, but it didn't actually touch any of the chet, would that be possible?
Right, so we haven't seen it. The Shulchan Aruch says make sure you don't do that. Make sure it doesn't go into the airspace. Right. Let's have a look at the MISHNA Berura now and see if it's good. If it did happen, are the tefillin kosher or possible? We're going to see now in the MISHNA Berura. Okay. The Shulchan Aruch just told us to be careful. It was warning the sofa to be careful. Right. Let's have a look what the halacha is. We're going to have a look. Let's have a look at MISHNA Berura Sif Kodem Kuf Lamed Beis. Kuf Lamed Beis. That's just over halfway down the first column. Just over halfway down the right column. MISHNA Berura Sif Kodem Kuf Lamed Beis. It's near the end of the line. Below negia, to be negia b'lav hochi posel. If it touched the letter, it's possible mishum cheson hakofik zugdil, as we mentioned. If it touches the hay or the ches, then it's not so. Each letter is not surrounded by parchment, so it's possible because of the psul of mukaf kavir. From the wording of the Shulchan Aruch, who said the sofa should be careful, yesh li zoher should be careful. The dafke lechatchila. If it entered the airspace of the hay or the ches, it's only lechatchila one should be careful it doesn't happen. However, if it did happen, the tefillin are not possible. That's what it sounds like from the wording of the Shulchan Aruch, who just said to be careful. However, this is only if he was careful. This is only if it didn't enter too much that it actually ruins the shape, the form of the os, of the letter. Only entered slightly into the airspace. If it entered so much that it changed the form of the letter doesn't anymore look like a or a ches. A child, if a child won't recognize the letter mahu, well, if it entered slightly into the airspace of the hay ches, it's kosher. If it entered a lot into the airspace of the hay ches, we have to check now with a child if it still looks like a hay ches.
So
the way we check is by covering up the bottom of the lamed and only revealing the top part of the lamed. We cover up. If he sees the lamed at the bottom, he'll understand that the neck of the lamed belongs to the lamed, and it does not belong to the hay or the ches above it. We cover up the bottom of the lamed. We cover up the bottom of the lamed, and we show him the letter, the hay or the ches, with this the neck of the lamed sticking into the hair space, and we see if he still recognizes it as a hay or a ches. If he does, then it's kosher. If not, then it's possible. The reason why we have to do that, why do we cover up the bottom of the lamed, is because when it's written, it's written starting from the top of the lamed. So when it was written, the first part was written before the bottom existed. At that stage, right? At that stage, there wasn't a bottom part of the lamed. There was only a top part of the lamed, and therefore we have to see if the hay or the ches are recognizable, right, with this neck of the lamed sticking into them. Are they still recognized as a hay or a ches?
So you could turn a dalet into a hay.
Exactly. That's an even bigger problem. That we're going to talk about now. Right, till now we just talked about if it goes into hay or ches, or goes into any other letter where it's not going to turn it into a different letter. Right? What happens if the neck of the lamed goes into the bottom of the letter where it can turn it into a different letter? The biggest problems are resh and daled. If the neck of the lamed goes into resh or daled, then it could look like a hay. Let's have a look. Let's continue and see what the halacha is. Okay, so the kolshkein, we're continuing from where we're up to. We're now in line with 6 lines from the bottom. 6 lines from the bottom. There's a parentheses. V'gam brackets and square brackets. V'gam lo yitzur boy tikun mishum shelo kisidro. Right. In this case, also, and once the child doesn't recognize it as a hay or ches, one cannot even correct the letter because the tefillen will then be written shaloi kisidron in the incorrect order. This is even more of a problem if the head of the lamed enters into the airspace of a daled or a reish, and then it looks like a hay. Then it's possible. Here it doesn't even help if the child was to read it correctly. In the case where it entered into the airspace of a hay or a ches, it doesn't turn it into a different letter. We just want to know if it's still recognizable as a hay or a ches. We show it to a child, covering up the bottom of the lamed. If, however, it enters into the airspace of a daled or a reish, then we've already determined it's possible, it looks like a hay, and it's possible. Once we see that it looks like a different letter, it doesn't help if the child reads it correctly, because we've already determined it looks like a hay. So it's possible.
Sometimes a lamed I've seen written where the top is kind of curved, so it doesn't go straight up.
Often a sefer will do that. He'll see he's going to end up, he'll bend it a little bit more to avoid that problem. Yeah. Yes. As a result of this problem, the lamed touching the top part, often one can have a different problem. This can cause a different problem. It can cause the sofa to make the neck of the lamed too short. The neck of the lamed has to look like a vov, not a yud. Right? Meaning the neck has to be long. If it's a short neck, it's a yud. Right? There has to be a long neck, long enough that it's a vov sitting on top of the lamed. So often, the sofa, because his wife is going to touch, he's going to make short lameds, and they're going to be yuds, and then it's going to be a different problem. Right? And then also one has to have it shown to a competent Rav to find out if it's possible because of this problem. Okay? So these are some of the problems the lamed can cause. And therefore, what the sofa has to do in order to avoid these problems is he has to make sure that he doesn't write his ksav too big. Right? He has between the sirtut. We mentioned that the sofa has sirtut. He has lines on the parchment, not lines written with pen or pencil. Rather, they are lines engraved into the parchment, right? Which are called the sirtut. Right? We've talked about them, and we talked about how he hangs the letters from the sirtut. Right? The top of the letter, but not like we write on top of a line. The sofa writes underneath a line. He hangs the letter from the line, right? So the top of the letter starts from the sirtut, from the line. We mentioned this, okay? So he has to be careful when he looks at his sirtut. He has one over here, one over here. He has to make sure that the size of that he has enough space between the lines for the body of the letter, right? In addition to that, he also needs, if there's a lamed coming from the bottom line, There has to be enough space for that lamed. Okay? Now the lamed, how much of the lamed goes above the line? The size of a vav. A vav is the size of any regular letter. So between the two sirtutim, you have to have the size of two letters. Two letters. One for the top line, the regular, all the letters on the top line, and also for the vav of the lamed, which is coming above the bottom line.
So the vav of the lamed will necessarily go up to the top line, above the top line? It must?
Yes, because the roof of the lamed is going to be written just hanging from that, the lower line, and the vav of the lamed is going to be coming above. Right? This is the length of a vav, the height of a vav. So the sofer has to leave enough space between for two letters plus a tiny bit, a hairbreadth, so that the lamed doesn't touch. Right? So you have to make sure. So that's usually where you get a problem. If you look at it as mezuzah and you see that the letters, you judge immediately. You see that between the two sirtutim, you can see. Look at any regular letter. You see that it's covering more than half of the space. You know to be very careful and check the whole line, the whole mezuzah very, very carefully, or tefillen very carefully, or the Sefer Torah, because you know that the sofer is going to have to deal very cleverly with all these problems. You're going to run into problems, right? There's not going to be enough space for his lamed, and you're going to have to check every lamed very carefully to make sure there's not touching or going to airspace of any letter, and that they're long enough. He hasn't made them too short, because that's bound to happen if he's written the ksav too big. Okay?
So if the lamed goes between two letters, or we're going to come to that, then it looks like a vav on the line.
If the lamed goes into between, in the gap between letters, then that's okay.
It is okay?
Yeah, if it goes between letters.
Because if the neck of the lamed goes between two letters, wouldn't it look like a vav?
It wouldn't be able to go between two letters because the letters are too far apart. And it would be the Sefer Torah would be possible because it looks like two words. Okay. But if it went between two words, it just entered a little bit into the airspace between a tiny bit, and it would still be okay. If it went in significantly, then it could be a problem. Right. But of course, as we said, one should avoid it. But the Sefer should avoid it by making sure that the size of his writing fits the lines, as we mentioned. Okay. I saw recently a year ago. I saw Sefer Torah written like this. So that means at the end of the Sefer Torah, he started writing slightly too big, and they had problems with the lamed were then the necks of the lamed were too short. To send it back to the Sefer to correct them. It's very interesting how one corrects it. Yeah.
So when he's actually writing, a hay only takes up half the space between the two lines. Is that correct?
Correct.
And a lamed would take up the full space.
The neck of
the hay would only take half the space between the lines. And the lamed would take the full space.
The lamed would take the half the space beneath the line and half the space above the line.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
How does that work for... That's a letter going up. How does it work for a letter going down, like a kuf?
So the kuf as well. The kuf will take up more than half the space, which is fine, because the only letter, you just have to make sure it doesn't hit any lameds. Right? The other letters don't go above the line, so it's fine that the kuf goes beneath. It goes down a little bit more, and the nun, nun pshuta, the final nun, the final tadi, they go a bit longer, which are fine. You just have to make sure they don't hit any lameds. Okay. Let's see the next if. If kaf tes. Right, we now 3 lines from the top. Im eina parsha shagois befiv, soch shichtov mitoich haksav. If the sofer doesn't know the parashas by heart, he has to make sure to write mitoich haksav, meaning he should have a tikkun or a mezuzah in front of him, which he's reading from, and he's copying. Says the MISHNA Berura. I'm reading now the second column of the MISHNA Berura, the top line. The second column, the top line. In the middle of the line, there's a full stop. The Bach says that one should always, even if the sofer does know by heart, he should always write mitoich haksav. It's a mitzvah min hamuvcha. The best way of doing the mitzvah is to always copy from an existing mezuzah, tefillen, or from a tikkun sofer. Let's continue. If lamed, back to the Shulchan Aruch, 4 lines from the top. If lamed, eino yirashai lichtov elam ken yedei alikos. One is only allowed to write. Sofer is only kosher to be a sofer if he knows how to read. Right? That's allowed to read as well. The MISHNA Berura explains, she can easily make a mistake if he doesn't know how to read. Sif Lamed Aleph, back to Shulchan Aruch, 4 lines from the top. Im einoi koisev mitoich haksav, lo yichtov al peh, shemakre oisoi acher, elem ken yachzor hu, v'yiko befiv. If he's not copying, he's not reading from a written parasha, but he's doing it bal peh because someone is reading out to him the letters and he's writing it as it's read to him. He should, after it's read to him, he should reread it back. Every time the makre says to him a word, he should say back the word and then write it. Okay? Let's have a look at the MISHNA Berura. Sivkotn Kuf Lamed Vav, Metoich Ksav. We're now 4 lines from the top of the left column. From the Shulchan Aruch, it sounds like the Sofer only has to verbalize the words if he's not copying from a written wording. It's only if someone's reading out the words to him. Let's skip the brackets. Many Achronim argue on the Shulchan Aruch and hold that he should always say the words, verbalize the words before he writes it. The Bach explains that the kedusha of when he says the word, that has to be drawn onto the written word. Therefore, he has to say each word, and the holiness of saying the word gets pulled onto the written word. As he writes them. So therefore, the Sofer should always read the word, even if he's copying from a written mezuzah. He should always, or Teffillen, sorry, in our case Teffillen, he should always, or from a tikkun, he should always say the word before writing it. This is only lechatchila. However, this is only in the first instance. B'di'eved, if he didn't do this, he did not read out the words, he just copied from a mezuzah without saying the word bal peh. He should, the Teffillen are still kosher, even if he didn't read the words out, even if he didn't verbalize the words. Okay. The Kesef HaSofer mentions that he can read a few words in a go. He doesn't have to read one word one by one. Can read a couple of words. However, they do say that it's not a good idea to do that, because if a Sofer reads a couple of words and then writes, then they find often that he makes mistakes, because the final word is what's stuck in his mind when he's writing the first word. So he could come to make a mistake. It's better to read it one word at a time. Okay. Fine. Okay, we're out.